I had a guy once, this is like one of my favorite stories. He was like probably a 10, looks-wise a 10. Brain-wise, maybe a 3.5. Not the smartest, but super attractive. And so I thought, let's give this a shot.
Today on Beyond Dating, we chatted with Mindie from MaleRoom, and she gave us all the insider info on boys and girls. And our sponsor for today's episodes is Beyond, the newest dating app in town. Check it out at datebeyond.co. What is the cringiest thing anyone with a penis has ever told you?
Well, how much time do we have? Just kidding. Actually, I have a very recent one, which is a cringy comment followed up by a cringy ask. Yes. Are you sitting down? Okay. So basically, I met a guy at a conference, which I thought was an interesting place to meet. It was definitely not a date, but we kind of hit it off. We were talking shop. We had coffee. Then he asked me to dinner the next night. So all was going well. And he was basically going into the fact that he's very spiritual, and he wanted me to send him pictures of my face, and not just like a normal picture, but I had to be like deadpan. And then he wanted a profile picture. And he told me that he has someone that does these readings. And I was thinking, I asked some friends, like, is this Tinder swindler stuff? Like, is this guy gonna steal my identity? But the more I talked to him, I thought, you know what? He's just normal. He's like a founder type. He's very open. And I decided I'm going to send him the pictures, which I know is weird, but I was just like, I'll be open. Maybe I'm being too judgy. So I send the pictures, and then he says, okay, these are fine, but when you send the profile one, I need you to show your ear. You need to move your hair and show your ear, because this guru that I talked to needs to see your bone structure or whatever. I was at work. I was busy. I was just like, this is a little too weird. This is my line, but I'm going with it. Sent the pictures, never heard from him again.
What did you use the pictures for then?
I don't know. So it's cringy and it's scary.
Ew.
So if there's a few of me running around, you're welcome.
Well, definitely be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
So I know you interview a lot of men.
Yes.
On your podcast. It's the MaleRoom, right?
Yes.
So what's that like? What have you learned from that experience?
It's fascinating inside the mind of men. Mm-hmm. The reason I started this is because I wanted to recreate conversations that I have with my guy friends about dating. And typically the advice or perspectives they have is very dependent on the type of guy that they are. So if they're like the smooth guy, they'll read a text and say, oh yeah, I text this to 5 girls at one time. Or if it's my friend who's more of the sensitive type, they might think that a guy's being vulnerable in what he's saying. So I've learned a lot. And basically, the biggest takeaway for me is that we're kind of all non-experts. And there's a lot of people that have perspectives, but depending on your experiences, how you're wired, and your life stage is what I found to be really different among all the different types of guys.
Mm-hmm. So I know we're all non-experts, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm sure people think that they are experts. What are those interactions like with those guys?
So yeah, some definitely think that they're experts, and some give advice that might be different than how they actually date, which is interesting. So I'll give you an example. One of the things we do is we translate text for girls. So when they submit, guys will say something like, play hard to get, right? But then let's say on the first date, I always ask, like, should a girl put out? Should she not? And they'll say, no. The ones I date, I want to like get to know and cultivate, but then they'll always try, right? So I'll ask them, like, what do you want this girl to do? In the heat of the moment, you're showing her that that's where you're at. And if she is also feeling that way, then I think she thinks you're in sync, right? But then there's this afterthought of like, but if she did, then she's doing that with so many different guys probably, and I'm no different. So I need the girl that's gonna wait, you know? So it's like, it's sometimes a bit of a disconnect. And I think they sometimes don't even realize it.
Yeah, why do you think that is, honest?
I think sometimes it's like what people think they want versus what they want is different. Like it's like head versus heart versus other parts, you know? So sometimes in the heat of the moment, you know, one of the things I ask is I'm always curious if a girl says to a guy that she's looking for something serious, then guys tend to want that conversation to be delayed. Like, get back to me on like a third or fourth or fifth date. It's too much pressure. But then some of the guys will say, I might think that I want something serious, and I could tell a girl that. But then as I get to know her, we might not be a match. So now I'm kind of a jerk because I told her I was open to something serious, and it was in the beginning. And then sometimes there's the opposite of that, which is guys who say that they are open to it because they want to hook up. And that's where I try to get into it and say, if you just communicate with a girl and tell her clearly what you want, and if you don't want to be serious, then let her decide if she wants to be physical with you, knowing that it's just fun versus taking her down this road of what could be.
So like when you're interacting with these guys, when you're talking to these guys, how many of them do you think, like percentage wise, are secure and they know what they want and are like in sync with what they think what they want and what they actually want?
I would say
like
about 12%.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
12%? Oh no.
Yeah. I think there's this illusion that sometimes I think we think that if a guy isn't ready and he's telling us he's not ready, then we're like, oh my God, this is a challenge, or I'm going to be the one to change him. And sometimes that can happen, but a lot of times it's like the age old, like someone will tell you who they are in the beginning. And one hack I like to do, it happens organically, but I think it's helpful to share, is like on a date, when you're getting to know someone, I think people go to like the go-to questions, like, you know, basics, where you're from, with siblings, are you close? I'll always ask like, so are you and your brother similar or different? Ooh, then it's like, well, he's like so giving and I'm known as the selfish brother. And you're like, oh, that's a clue, you know, like, or through a story. If I'm like figuring something out, like at work or a big life decision, I'll just share it and like get someone's opinion, like, oh, I was going to move somewhere. What do you, and then someone will give you their opinion, and then they'll sometimes tell a story. And then you can see like, as their character, who are they in the story? Are they like the good friend? Are they the douchebag? Like, who are they?
What's the best, or not best, but what's the most interesting thing that you've learned when interviewing all these men for your podcast?
I would say sometimes the answers will literally be one answer at the beginning of a sentence and another answer at the end. Like sometimes I think they're just not sure. So I'll give you an example. One episode we did, I asked sex on the first date, deal maker or deal breaker. And the guy, very charming, attractive British guy, so that was helping the answer. But he said, oh no, I want to get to know the girl for who she is. And he's obviously handsome. And so I'm hosting, and in real time, I'm just like, yes, you know, I agree. And I said, well, then do you still try? Oh yeah, you got to always bloody try. I want to test the chemistry. And I'm like, bro, like, what do you want this girl to do? You know, like you just said you want her to wait, but then you say you always try. So, you know, what should this girl do? So there's situations like that where I think guys think they know something and then they change their mind in real time. The other thing is, what I'm noticing more recently is that a lot of guys don't really know their roles anymore. So I think previously it was like men were the caregiver, they were like the provider, they were the man, and we were like, thank you, we're gonna do everything else. And they could be like very masculine, and that was attractive. And the more closed off they were, maybe that was also like, we wanted to really get them to open up, and that was our job. And now I think that women are doing so much more, and they're confident, and they want a guy who's going to therapy. I think a lot of men can be lost because they're not sure how much they should do. They're conditioned to be like, very masculine and be in that role. So I'm seeing more of that. The guys that are open to talking about that are a little unclear, and they need to reinvent themselves. And I think the right person can help them do that, or they can do the work themselves too. But they just, I think the ones who embrace that are having stronger relationships.
Mm-hmm. So when you're like, what do you think holds people back from, going to therapy, exploring, and trying to, build a stronger relationship with yourself and others?
I think for men, historically, it hasn't been a thing. Like for men, their dads weren't going to therapy. Mm-hmm. And I think that in some places and cultures, it has like a negative connotation, like, oh, I don't need that, I'm fine, and I'm the strong person. And come to find out, like when you go there, that's like where the growth is. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things we started doing is we're interviewing men all across the world. So we just did episodes in Tel Aviv, and we're going to go to Wyoming and interview cowboys, like all these different types of men. And so in some of like certain cultures, therapy is just like, it's a sign of weakness. And so historically, I think that it just sometimes has that connotation.
Mm-hmm. So how has this whole process affected your dating life?
I feel much better about it. Like, especially a lot of women come up after we do an event, or they come up, or they comment, and they're like, I feel so much better because I'm experiencing this too. I think a lot of dating content for people is a lot of self-help is what's been out there. And I think it's kind of reassuring to see and hear all these different things and think like, oh, me too. I've been on a date like that. It doesn't mean that any of these people are bad people. They're just not a match. And, different dates and different types of styles that people have bring out different sides of you. And so I think if we go on a bad date, it's like, oh my God, maybe it's either like, what's wrong with them? Or like, did I really say that? Or what? And there's a lot of that can be heavy, instead of just like, that guy was whack. Like, that's not my person. And there's probably someone for them and someone for me. And that's not it. And thank God that was only an hour and a half. Other pro tip, I recommend happy hours. That way you can get in and get out. You can say you have a dinner after, and if it goes well, you can cancel the dinner, that kind of thing.
I've totally done that before. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So what are the different types of men then?
Oh my God, there's so many. Okay, so there's typical like archetypes. Mm-hmm. Like some that we've had would be like, there's a guy who called himself a finance non-bro, who was kind of like a finance guy, but had a sensitive side. Then there's like the hipster burner type. These are all just like general archetypes. And then there's what I found like hybrids of those. So you could be like the smooth, nice guy with an edge, So I've seen a lot of different types, and I even when you think you might know someone in their type, they'll come out with a point of view that now you're thrown off, and they might be different. So there are these kind of, and men can do that and look at women. Obviously they do that too, but there's variations. But I find there's like a few main themes across the board from what I've seen.
Okay, so based off of the main themes,
yes,
like how do I interact with each one, each type?
Well, I do this thing where I get guys to do PSAs, and what always comes out from all the types is like, just be yourself. And whether that is cliche or just sounds good and makes them look good, I think you can learn a lot about yourself by obviously being yourself, but when you're interacting with these types, right? And seeing what they bring out in you. So maybe the smooth guy makes you a little anxious because you're curious if what they're saying is authentic or not, but they're so hot that you don't care. Like that could bring out one side of you. And then over time, maybe you realize like that's pretty surface and that was fun, but I don't want that. And the sensitive guy, like even when I ask them a question and they answer and it's like poetic, I'm like, oh my God, I should date the sensitive type, you know? But then the nice guy, like who doesn't want a nice guy? But then the nice guy, if he's too nice, then maybe if you're a strong type, you want someone that will challenge you. So I think it's like a combination. I clearly don't have it all figured out, but from all the market research I've done, I think it's like showing up, being yourself, and seeing how you interact when you get to know them and what you're learning about them. And like, but really look at like what they're bringing out in you. And if you like that side of you, or if it's too anxious and, you know, they wait days or hours to text, or they're always rescheduling, like that's not a version of you that's probably ideal. But someone who's like consistent, to me, that is like number one these days. Consistency. It's like when someone's just showing up continually and it's easy, like that is all I'll make time for. If it's this like sporadic inconsistency, does that make sense? Yeah, it does. Kind of. Then I don't have time for it anymore, which I used to make time for that because it was exciting and interesting, I think.
Okay, so I want to get into some spicy stuff. So what are like men's darkest secrets that maybe they don't even know? I think, okay, their darkest secrets. They don't always share them with me. But when they have, I think that like when a lot of men are growing up, they see, and women too, but you see like these rom-coms or you see these movies and it sort of begins to like mold what your type is. So if a guy tells me, if I'm like, oh, what's your type? And they're like, tall, blonde, big rack, you know, I'm like, cool, nice to meet you. Not it. But like, I think sometimes guys will gravitate to whatever they've been conditioned to like. And then from there, the like fantasy of what someone is versus who they want. But then they also want someone eventually, if they want to have a family, that's like going to be a mother figure or that kind of thing. So I think sometimes some of them have talked about like the fantasy of someone versus like who they end up with. And will they always want that other person? I had a guy once, this is like one of my favorite stories. He was like probably a 10, looks wise a 10, brain wise maybe a 3.5. Not the smartest, but super attractive. And so I thought, let's give this a shot. So this is a long time ago, but when we went out, hung out a couple times and it just like couldn't connect on anything that wasn't like total surface. And so I thought like, all right, this will be easy. I'll just like fade it out. And then he kept wanting to have plans. So I decided, okay, the last time I'm just going to like tell him I just would guess I'm not his type and like kind of end it as a compliment. So I said, there was like this tall, like model-esque girl walking by and I was like, yeah, you know, I feel like that girl would like be much more your type. And he was like, really? Yeah. Like, normally she would be like, I used to date girls that look like that. But then I realized like if they had work done that like they would look like the original version of the woman instead of like, if we had kids, it would look like that version of her, the early version. And I was like, wow, this guy is sharp. So we broke up. But yeah, I think that just going back to like what you think you want and what you really want could be very different depending on how aware you are of your surroundings. Okay, then what traits do men share across all archetypes then?
They always want action. Number
Facts.
one. Let's see. Across the types, I think sometimes they're a bit misunderstood. I'm always on the side, like I'm a spy for the girls, but a friend of the guys kind of thing. And so in that respect, I try to be open to hear it. But I think a lot of guys, they will think with the physical, and that gets them in a lot of trouble at any age or archetype. So I think the ones that I think what I find is when guys become like an uncle, or they have like something like that or their friends, the wingmen, like start dying down a little bit, and they look around and they're like, wait a second, there's more to life than like going out and getting numbers. And I think sometimes that can really like calm a guy down. But I think a lot of it historically is like, sometimes guys will get in their own way, or they'll say the wrong things in the moment to get a quick fix, and then later realize that they maybe went too far. So I think not with every guy, but I do think a lot of times that is like a big obstacle that sometimes gets in the way.
So as a spy for the girls,
yes,
and a friend of the boys,
yes,
how do you have any tips on how to communicate with men?
Yes. I think a lot of the old ways are very outdated. So I think the like game playing, everyone likes a little mystery. So I don't think like the second someone reaches out, you're always available. Just human nature. Sometimes it's like, oh, I wish I could talk to them. And then 2 hours later they call and you're like, yes. But I think like back in the day, there was this book called The Rules, and it was like, don't accept a date after Wednesday for the weekend. And like, it was all this like, it was like a lot of persona of how to be to like get a guy. But at the end of the day, if you're playing all these games, when you finally like get the guy and you're more available, like, is that going to work or not? Or you always have to do that. So I think it's like, it's somewhere in between, just communicating. I think the biggest thing is communicating what you want, just your values. It doesn't have to mean with you. So like if we're on a date and I tell someone, eventually I do want to settle down and have a family. And if that, I never used to do that. I would wait and wait. One time I waited 3 months because it was so much fun. And then come to find out we were so misaligned, and I'll never get that time back. Like that was like, and I think if it's too pragmatic, it takes away the magic. But I think early on, just communicating what you want. Or, a lot of people now don't want to have kids, and that's fine too. Or a lot of people just want to be single and like have the best time. But I think if that's what you want, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're wanting to date multiple people and someone else is wanting to settle down and you don't talk about that, then one person's going to be frustrated. The single person, eternal single person, should be with another eternal single person. Or people who want something sooner. I think communicating that is important, and it'll weed out all the wrong people.
Mm-hmm. So do these same tips apply to men when they're trying to communicate with women, or do you have like extra tips that you give to the boys?
Yeah, I tell them that if you tell a girl what you want, then their odds of like getting laid might be lower. Sure. But there's a lot of confusion when I think like someone I know mentioned on the show that they were invited to Thanksgiving with someone's family. And during that time, the guy was like to her, oh, are you dating anyone now? And she's like, wait, what? I thought we were dating. I'm literally here with your family. Like, I thought this was a step, and you are like wanting to know about what I'm doing outside of this. So I think situations like that, I tell these guys, like, it's just a point of view. Again, I'm like the anti-expert, but if you tell a girl, look, I'm really attracted to you, I just got out of something serious, I'm not in that headspace for a while, but I'd love to hang out, then the girl has all the information she needs. And if it's just fine for her and it can be fun, then she knows the facts. It's when, some of these guys in the moment will be like, I would love something serious. Like, I've been thinking, I want to settle down for a while. Like, New York is fun, but I want that one person. It's cuffing season or, and then the girl is like, wow, I want to cultivate this, And so then she's going down a very different road and the guy is like, cool, this, she's very open to doing whatever. And then eventually it, could get ugly. So I tell these guys, like, just from talking to a lot of women, like, they just want to know. It doesn't mean that it's a deal breaker, but they just want the honesty.
Mm-hmm. And off of that, when you're dating, it's like a whole different ball game. You've explained, obviously, but what does modern dating look like then to you?
It's exhausting. I think it's like a paradox of choice. Mm-hmm. It used to be that you would date within your radius, like, someone knows someone that lives here, or now it's like endless. And I think because like online of swiping has also like determined the behavior offline, it's like you could be on a date and someone walks by and you're like, oh, it's like, it's hard for people to focus. And so I think so much of it is like being responsible for your own actions and looking at yourself and saying, like, I mean, I do it too. Like I could be on a date and be like, oh, this guy is really interesting. Oh, but that guy, he was interesting and he was well traveled and he's like volunteers. But this guy, oh, but he's so hot, and it's like
there's so many options.
So many options. And so I think modern dating is like, it's a lot. And I think it's important for people to like be responsible for their own behavior and be focused on what you want and look at the signs too. Because if you do want something serious and the person's not showing up, I think it's just like moving on quicker. I think before people would stay in relationships longer. And I think it's important to like look around, like, are you getting what you need? Are you being a good partner? Is this person bringing out the best in you and vice versa? And if not, like, because there are so many choices, go. And then, it can be really fun. You could like meet all these different types of people that you wouldn't normally meet, which I think is an advantage of it. But with that, it's also like reining it in and making sure that you're giving people enough of a chance too.
So you're a breast cancer survivor.
Yes.
How has that, changed your dating life and affected the way you interact with, men and the way you seek out relationships?
So yes, this is very recent. So this is about a year and a half ago. I think, it hasn't made me, it hasn't made things heavier. I like made sure I don't want to lead with it in any kind of relationship. But what I found is that I have a lot less time for wasting my time. So I think before it was like, oh, this guy, like he's half in, half out. He's there, he's showing up, he's not. And now it's like, I don't have time for that. Literally going through something like that, it gave me much more perspective. It didn't like change me completely. But it definitely opened my eyes to like, if someone's showing up, I'm there. If they're not, I'm out. And so thankfully that's one way to look at it. And then the other thing is, it's a very personal thing. So like, it's a personal part. It's so, it's something I want to share with someone, but it's not something I want to share like right out of the gates. It's heavy. And especially if you're just getting to know someone and keeping it light. But then it's been eye-opening too, because when I do share it, I can really see how that person receives it. And if they ask questions, even if they're awkward, it's okay. Because sometimes people like, they don't know what to say or what not to say. But I find I can see if someone would be there and like really show up. Or if they kind of want to just like move on. And in that case, they can't really go there. And that could be fine if that's a partnership you want. But for me, going through something like that, it really opens you up and gives you a lot of depth, and you want that partner to be there with you. Mm-hmm. And I was also single during that time. So that was, it was intense, but makes you very strong. So you come out of it and you don't have time for a lot of the stuff maybe you made time for before.
No time to waste.
Nope.
So have you noticed that a difference in the way people treat you or react after you tell them, after you've been seeing them for a while or whenever you share it?
Yeah, guys don't care. Like, that came out wrong. Physically, they don't care. Like, I have scars, they're going away in time, and I'm not timid about it. But when I share, I'm like, well, they're like, I don't care, take it off, let me see, and I'm like, you guys are so gross, but okay. So it's like, it makes it easier, because I think in the beginning I was like, okay, so on this date, I'm going to share it. And they literally do not care. They're just like, I don't care. I mean, some are very understanding and they want to go there, and some are just like, cool, like not a thing. So it depends on the type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite type?
Favorite type of guy? I do, but I haven't met him yet. It's like there's all these variations of. So, I mean, I love men. I love dating. And especially with the show, it's definitely not man hating, but there's like qualities of one type that I really like and another. If I could just make the guy from the types, that would be great. But yeah, there's a pattern. Some of my friends think it's a good pattern. Others disagree. But yeah, generally, I gravitate to a certain type.
Okay, we're going to have to go to Build-A-Boy and get you.
Oh my God, that's a great idea.
Right?
Should we?
We could do it.
Yeah, let's do a side business.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got the boys on deck. Well, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Wow, so you've been so insightful, and I really want to learn more and watch more of your shows. So how can we find your show, and how can we find you?
Thank you. And so on Instagram, we're MaleRoom Official. We're on YouTube and TikTok. And also we have some episodes up on Cosmo.com. And also I always ask women to submit their texts. So if you have any shady, questionable texts that you want analyzed on the show, please feel free to send.
Oh, I have so many.
Oh yeah, and send me yours, please.
I got you. I'll show you the list. Screenshots on screenshots.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thank you.
This has been really fun.
Likewise.